order and you submit it with what's called a notice of presentment. You give it to the other side, and then they have a week to file an objection if they think your proposed written order does not reflect what the judge ruled. I wanted to get the order entered so I can clean this matter up. So it was through me that the order eventually got filed. The prosecutor didn't object to the proposed order because I just simply put in writing what the Judge Sheeran had said. It got entered. Oh, now what happens? Well, I don't think and you know what? When the prosecutor couldn't object to it because it was accurate. And once he doesn't object to it, the judge has to enter it. So I forced their hand. I forced the issue. That was over a year ago. And so what happened is that now the prosecutor, he gets flipped this hot potato from the judge because I got the order entered. So who's going to prosecute me? The prosecutor says, well, I don't want to do this. So he sent the matter to the Attorney General of Michigan. Attorney General of Michigan takes it, looks at it, and says, holy crow. Because I'm telling you what, there's no criminal contempt on my part. It's all a political power play. So the AG's office looks at it and they go, well, no, we're not going to get involved in this. So they ship it to the Tuscola County prosecutor, Mark Green, who received it. I think he received the case, actually I think it was a year ago next month. And he's sitting on it. And I predict nothing's going to ever come of it because he's got his own role to play as a prosecutor. He's supposed to prosecute when there's crime, but he's not compelled to abuse that duty because he's not in the Bay County clique. So it's an outside authority again, just like Judge Duthie. You always have to go outside this town because in this town is a tight clique. They all hang tight. It's a good old boy system.
I have another question for you. A lot of times when I'm discussing this with other people, older people, I've heard them say, why does it matter? As far as the domestic violence thing being handled by one judge. And a lot of times with court-appointed counsel, and if you're lower income, that's all you're left with. And a lot of times they're telling you, just go ahead and take a plea. It's just a 93-day misdemeanor. It's no big deal. But isn't there a federal law in place that says even with a misdemeanor, you can never again own a firearm if you're found guilty of domestic violence?
There is a law, but it's not federal, it's state. And in Michigan, if you're convicted of domestic violence, you cannot own, possess, or use a firearm for the rest of your life. When that law took effect, I remember reading about it because there were a number of police officers who lost their jobs because they couldn't carry a weapon anymore. Okay, because they'd been convicted of domestic violence. So I'm sorry, did I cover your? Okay. And so the old folks who say, what difference does it matter? And I don't think that's necessarily confined to just old people. I think there's a lot of folks that would feel like, what difference does it matter if they rotate the judges or they have one DV king? Here's the difference. You heard it not from me, you heard it from Art Dorr. Because when you have collusion between the prosecutor's office and a domestic violence king, then any case flies. Okay? They don't have to investigate a case. Art Dorr said he was never even interviewed by the police. They don't have to investigate a case. They can just file a charge recklessly, without foundation or supporting facts, and run with it. Why? Because they know they have a judge in their corner. They know that if they show up at a like in Art Dorr's case, I believe the prosecutor did show up at the time of the arraignment and argued that there should be a no contact order. Political grandstanding for the cameras because they had a big fish on the line. That's why, especially in a town where the domestic violence king who's been anointed came from the prosecutor's office, was encouraged by his chief prosecutor boss to run for the job. It's an unhealthy situation. And that's why it does make a difference. particularly in this town. Now, there are other communities, like Lansing, that have an actual bona fide domestic violence court that takes a whole different approach to the whole social problem than what is done in this town, because there's no approach. There's no logical approach in this town. It's just Judge Kelly dictating his orders and doing what he wants, and I swear to God, there's no set rhyme or reason behind it. Just whatever he wants to do. If he takes a dislike to you, you better watch out. And here's another thing that happens with the prosecutor's office and the judge when they're in collusion like this in this town. The prosecutor will go, and particularly this is true if it's a poor person, they'll go and argue that this person should have a high bond. Domestic violence is, it's a misdemeanor charge. So King Kelly will set a real high bond because his colleagues want it. And then they put the poor guy, remember that one, the Casey Slates case that was up there? I didn't handle that case. I wasn't the lawyer on that case. Okay. But an attorney in town told me about it. And in that case, they put that trial off for, 3-4 months. And what they'll do is they'll put some poor guy in the jail, hike up his bond, stall the day of trial, keep adjourning it because D.V. King Kelly handles all domestic violence cases, and there's more domestic violence cases than anything else because the prosecutor's office is in cahoots with him. It's just a crazy, frightening cycle. And what they'll do is they'll keep somebody in jail to the extent that they'll say, well, just cop a plea and we'll release you. Well, he served 2 months of a 3-month maximum crime. I've seen people lose their jobs in situations like this. So that's why it does matter in this town with that judge on those kind of cases. Because it gives them a free hand to do whatever they want to the people, and I see that happen all the time. That's why I'm running. Anything else? We have, and I'm going to leave it up to you folks, because it's 9 o'clock. We've been at it for an hour and 45 minutes, but here's what I did. Unless there are any other questions. By the way, I think each of you got a copy of newspaper ad that was run about my endorsement by the City Employees Union. I was pretty proud of that. It was a strong endorsement. That's why I want to have get you. And let's say, isn't it something that the only two entities, the only two persons, if you will, who were willing to step forward and voice strong support was Art Door and the City Employees Union? A lot of quiet support, but no one wants their name tied to it, sadly enough. So what I did is I at one point sent Kelly a letter, and there it is. And in the letter I said, hey, there's a guy on M Live who said, or could have been a woman, I don't know. Someone on M Live said, why don't these two debate like, people on the stump do, candidates, so let them square off and debate. And I responded at the time, I said, fine with me. Kelly never responded to it. So when this program was set up and I had rented this place, I sent him this letter. And I said, hey, I'll cancel tonight's event if you'll come in and debate me. Let's talk about the issues. Get a neutral panel of people to ask questions so it's not loaded or stacked. He never responded to that letter. Okay? I was even willing to pay the whole price. Well, I was not surprised he didn't respond to that letter. What can he say? What kind of response can you offer when you illegally retaliate against a lawyer and ban him from cases, and an outside judge has to come in and say, stop that now? What's there to say? So I'm not surprised he didn't debate me. So what happened today, I noticed that MLive posted a story about my race. And they quoted him, they quoted me. And so this was all spontaneous, we just thought of it today. And if we could take a few moments, we can have the debate right now with Judge Kelly that he refused to come here and engage in. Anyone want to see it? Okay. So here we go, Judge Kelly. We gave you the opportunity. You wouldn't do it in person. Probably didn't have the nerve to. Didn't know what to say. So we're going to have it tonight. And we're going to use it based on what was on MLive today. So you can go home and read this for yourself. We did an abbreviated version of it. There's this first quote in today's electronic posting. I've been doing this job for 12 years, and I think I've been doing the job well. I believe that when people come to my courtroom, they're treated with courtesy, respect, and dignity. I mean, you'd have to watch it. You know, if you got some time to kill, go over to the courthouse on some Friday morning or watch a sentencing. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I read that. And that's why I didn't want to come here and say those things in person. They're not true. And if he's been doing the job for 12 years and he thinks he's done the job well, that's very subjective. Of course he does. He's got a sheriff now indebted to him because he's got his budget coming in, you know. He's got the prosecutor happy because the prosecutor's win-loss record keeps going up because they got the judge in their corner. And that serves the judge well, too, because these cases that should not be prosecuted are brought, and that increases Kelly's power and hold on people. I mean, it's just a vicious, self-serving, perpetuating machine over there. And so when he says, I think I've done the job well, I'm sure he does. And I'm sure that his cronies do too. But from what I hear in the community, the response I'm getting, that just isn't right. That just isn't accurate. This is an interesting one. You can go home and read this because I was quoted saying that Kelly was recruited to run for judge by his former boss, then chief prosecutor, Joe Sheeran. And it's interesting because, and you can read the whole extended account, but Kelly disputed that claim, saying, I believe I'm fair to all litigants. Well, isn't that a non-responsive response? I mean, the issue was that he was recruited by his boss, the chief prosecutor, and this is what's created this community menace. He says, well, I believe I'm fair to all litigants. So he skirts the issue, he dodges it. It's a fact. He was recruited by Sharon, and that was published in the Basic Times after I made a big stink about it because I didn't think it was proper or right. And you know, when I made that big stink back in 2000, turns out 12 years later I was right. Because I predicted this is not good, this is not healthy, and look where it's gotten us. Here he acknowledges it. He said he implemented the mandatory required drug and alcohol testing for defendants while on bond. While on bond. They haven't been convicted of anything. Just accusations. But now they got to give a urine test and blow in the little straw and all this other stuff. So we're doing the testing right up front while they're out on bond awaiting their hearings. I mean, isn't that bold? Just to admit it. So they're not reoffending or putting the public at risk. It's something I saw as a real need in the community. When you have people on their third or fourth drunk driving, you need somehow to monitor what they're doing. Well, I agreed with that last sentence. then he goes on, he says, Bay County already has specialized treatment courts for alcohol and illicit drugs. Kelly said they're looking to add a veterans court. You know, what's interesting, though, is that he didn't say we have a domestic violence court, did he? Did he? Because we don't. Google it. There are domestic violence cases or courts in Michigan that are structured toward rehabilitation and community involvement to tackle the problem in its entirety. We don't have that here, and he conveniently skips over it. And you know, when he says it's something I saw a real need for in the community, when you have people in their third and fourth drunk driving, you need somehow to monitor what they're doing. Well, I agree with that. But he does it across the board. Come into his court, no alcohol, I can do the DPT tests, you know. Now Bay County needs it as part of their budgeting process. So I object to the way it's done across the board with everyone because they want to make money off you. And I object to the way there's this no contact order across the board. It was nonsensical in the Matt Brakey case. It was nonsensical in the Casey Slater case. It was nonsensical in the Art Door case. Mr. Kelly, what do you say about that? Did these people make it up? Was Art Door up there lying? Oh, stone silence. Of course the king isn't going to come here. We knocked him off his throne tonight. Another one? Go ahead. Oh, here it is. Kelly said that even if the children aren't directly assaulted by a parent, their safety could still be jeopardized. Domestic violence affects the whole family. He said children are often either eyewitness it or hear it from another room. They're impacted physically and mentally. Children are often used to batterers to try to show to get the victim to not proceed with the prosecution. In other words, the husband or the wife is trying to pressure the other one to drop the charges, like they supposedly did with Art Door. That's what Kroc. Kelly added that the initial bond conditions he sets are not etched in stone. A particular defendant has been ordered not to have contact in order, a lawyer can always file a motion for modification of bond conditions. He said that's part of the process. We want to protect victims and those who are affected by violence. This is across the board. And you know what? Art, we didn't touch on this with Art, but he filed a motion to lift that order, and Kelly said no. And defense lawyers in this town know that there's no sense of doing that. There's no purpose. You're just going to eat up your client's money, filing motions you can't win on. So that's a crock. Judge, that's a crock, okay? That's not true. And when they say that domestic violence affects the whole family, children are often either eyewitness to it or hear it from another room. I'll tell you something. If there is a child who's being impacted, then there should be a no contact order. But, you know, it's like the Matt Brakey case you read about, the Casey Slater case you read about. There's no rhyme or reason or rational purpose in doing it. And so who's really being harmed here? The kids. The kids. Matt Brakey had his daughter custodial parent for 12 years. And he was forced into separation from his daughter for 3 months before the prosecutor dropped the case after King Kelly abused Mr. Brakey's rights and the unspoken rights of the child. Got another one? Kelly said that he volunteered to handle all the domestic violence cases when elected. He volunteered. So what, all of a sudden, how is it that he's getting them all? You can volunteer to do them, but now they're all being sent to him. Adding that keeping those cases under one roof ensures they're dealt with more effectively. Yeah, by who? By him and the prosecutor? By keeping those money coming in for the daily PPT test? Yeah, well, they are dealt with more effectively. But it's for the chosen few and not the many. It's a philosophy most domestic violence courts follow. You know, isn't this something? He's talking about domestic violence courts after he just acknowledged there's none in Bay County. It's a philosophy most domestic violence courts follow, that you have one judge dedicated to domestic violence. That's true in communities that have actually set up true bona fide domestic violence courts, which we have never done. Who, based on training and experience, understands the cycle of domestic violence. You know what? What a crock. He has no training or experience whatsoever that specializes him in that field. And there he is pontificating about it. These are some of the most difficult cases to handle. Yeah, especially when they put up some resistance to his abuse. I look at handling domestic violence cases almost as homicide prevention. That's symptomatic of the problem in this town. Overcharging, okay, and blowing out of proportion. Illustrates it. Okay, King, what do we got next? Kelly, however, said the court system is more efficient as it is and due largely to the working relationship he shares with his peers. Oh, really? What about 2 years ago when I filed suit about all the domestic violence cases going to you without legal authority? What about that, Judge? Judge Barnes told you she thought it should be by blind draw. Her challenger, now Judge Barnes, or Janer, he agreed. And what did you do? 3 days passed, and then he signs an order on his own saying, no, I get them all. There won't be any blind draw with me. Well, is that a working relationship he shares with his peers when he goes, I'm going to do what I want. I'm not, and no, I don't care what you think. We're not going to follow the law that had always been followed before I took office. Have a blind draw. The arrogance of making that kind of a claim in light of his history. The working relationship he shares with his peers. Yeah, Don Clyda, Judge Clyda, whom he teamed up with in keeping me off of 75% of the case. That's a good working relationship. You know, only what? It wasn't legal. That's the problem with it. An outside judge says, stop it. That's the working relationship he has with his peers. What else we got there, Judge? That's it. Well, I can fully understand why His Highness didn't want to come here tonight, because I would have loved to have discussed those things with him directly, but it's not going to happen, is it? So we draw a blank on the judge, okay? And it seems very appropriate under the circumstances that he is not here. He didn't have the nerve. Didn't want to answer the questions, the hard questions, because there were no answers. If you have not filled out an activist card yet, please do so. Drop it off tonight. The reason those are important is because if we can get enough signatures and cards filled out, we're going to take out a big ad and say these people support Czuprynski and have all these names. But also, it's an organizing tool to help get people volunteer to put up yard signs. We're having a big push this weekend. If you like my campaign literature, then watch your mail, because you're going to get another piece through the mail. When and if you do me a favor, contact us through Facebook and let us know you got one through the mail. And at the same time, if you liked what you heard and you like what you read in my literature, when that second piece comes through the mail, give it to somebody else. Pass the word along. There are some stickers in the back, those caricatures of Judge Kelly and the Photoshop of them that you just saw. Lots of fun. People look at those and have a lot of fun with them. Grab some stickers that you will put up and put them places where people see them. Then, here's a suggestion. Get next to it and pose. Put it on Facebook. It'll get a lot of interest. And I mentioned this earlier. Grab some extra literature. We have it on the way out. And when you do, the reason you want to do that is because when you see a Kelly sign in the future, just stop by and say, do you really know anything about this guy? You should read this and see if it's taken down voluntarily. We're not taking theirs down, but they're taking us down a lot. They're taking a lot of our signs down. Another possibility is get your family behind your yard sign in your yard, pose for it, take a picture, put it on Facebook, okay? Let your friends know who you support and that you're actively doing it. Let's just seize the opportunity and let's make it happen. Thank you.